I have the pleasure of having Adele Revella, the author of Biopersonas, and we had a fantastic talk today. Really, really very inspirational, and most importantly, very informative. And so I would really like to have this opportunity to ask you a couple of questions so that the people that weren't able to be here could maybe have a few of these insights.
Sure.
So one of the things that I saw on your website, on one of your blog posts, was this whole, I think it was a response to somebody else's Twitter comment about, oh, bio-persona is all stupid or something along that lines.
Yeah.
And you wrote a blog post about it. And so tell us a bit about that, and, what are stupid bio-personas and what are the right ones?
Yeah. So there's a lot of confusion around what a buyer persona is. And the part that's easy to get is it's an example of your target customer. What's hard for people about buyer personas and where the people start drawing a conclusion that they're a waste of time and is when people focus too much on just who is the buyer and not enough on what we call buying insights, which is tells you how, when, and most importantly, why people make the decision to do business with you, to actually at the moment that they're buying, what is going on, and at all the moments, if it's a long buying decision, how are they thinking, what are all their criteria, and what factors into that decision, because this is the reason we do personas, so we can make better decisions about how to influence that buyer's decision. And this is what's missing from a lot of buyer personas, and what was missing from that person who wrote online that buyer personas were a bad idea.
Thanks for that. The other thing you also mentioned in the talk was this thing about collecting stories rather than, most often we kind of think of going out there and getting to know your customers, and we have these surveys and we have questions, and you actually don't talk about that. You talk about collecting stories. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so your buyer's decision, and not, Vern was right when he said, it's not the customer decision. It's not what happens to your customer after they buy. When we do buyer personas, this is different than user personas. User personas are about the using experience. And I think a lot of people will talk to their customers about, did you like using it? Was it a good experience? For the buyer, we want to interview people and have them tell us their story about how they went from that very first moment when they thought, maybe I need this, and decided to make it a priority, and then evaluated all their options and said, yes, I'm going to write a check and I'm going to buy this product, this service, this solution. That we want to hear the buyer tell that story. And everything that went on their mind, everything they did, everything they thought about as they made that buying decision.
Is there a certain methodology in determining whom to talk to? Like, who should we talk to and whom shouldn't we talk to?
Sure. Yeah, well, yeah, and so it is a lot in the book because it's a whole chapter, but I'll just say briefly that we want to talk to the people who have recently made that decision and whom we have a strategic goal to target with our business efforts. And I know a lot of companies think, well, we just want to sell this to everybody. I mean, who wouldn't, right? We sell it to everybody. That's the biggest possible market. But it's a good idea to look at where are you most successful in your business right now, and where do you see that you should be successful, but maybe not quite. And usually we try to get people to build buyer personas not around the place where they're already most successful, but rather around the place where they want to be successful. Because the persona's purpose is to help you make better decisions. If you're already wildly successful in a particular part of the market, you're probably not going to change based on the buyer persona. So we'd like you to choose a place to begin that's based on something that's really important and yet hard to achieve the way it is right now.
Cool. And how many such stories does one need to collect in order to have kind of, based on your experience? I know that it would be different for everybody, but by and large, like, what is that kind of rough number?
Yeah, so it's a lot fewer than people think. So this is good news. And we've done a lot of, we do thousands of interviews a year, And we charge our clients per interview so they can decide how many we should do. We do a minimum of 10 interviews, but sometimes clients will say, no, we want more than 10. And here's what we've learned. Unless we want to segment the study, and I'll talk about that in a minute, 10 interviews. After the 10th interview, we don't learn anything new. And so what we mean when we segment the study is maybe you want to understand what's different about different types of buyers based on their gender, their income, if you're B2C, or if you're B2B, maybe geography or industry or company size. Then we recommend between 6 and 8 interviews in each of those segments so that you can find out what's different and what's different that matters. But it's a small number. And I would just add the caveat, because somebody asked me this question after the presentation. For most people, buyer personas are about making better decisions about marketing and sales efforts. If you're actually making a decision that is more important, like do we even go into this market and it's a big investment, then we would recommend that you follow up the interviews with a survey with a much larger sample. Take the findings from the interviews and expose those to a much larger group. And find out, get the market to validate whether all those findings are consistent over a larger population.
Cool. So, okay, we've done that. We've created these great buyer personas. How do we actually apply that? How do we take these insights and then convert that into business decisions that help us? So maybe you could give a couple of practical applications for this.
Yeah, so the first and foremost thing you need to do, the very first thing, is to look at everything you learned about, we call it, the 5 insights, which together represent all of the things your buyers were thinking about, all of their expectations and considerations and concerns. And for each and every one of those, develop a response. So we do this in a workshop with the subject matter experts in the company who know a lot about the capabilities and what the company can say and what it cannot. And we then bring those people together along with a moderator who's going to represent the buyer persona and the buyer's concerns. We look at all the verbatim quotes about each of those findings, and we develop an answer, a response. And at the end of that, it takes about 4 hours to do that. And then we have a long list of things to talk about. And then we go back and refine each of those. We look at each of those statements based on, is it strong enough competitively? Did we emphasize our strengths in each of those? Once we've got that done, that takes about another 2 hours. We spend about the final 2 hours, it's an 8-hour process, prioritizing the top 5 things we're going to talk about based on their relative importance to the buyer. So then we start to look at, well, over here we talked about this thing, but, really based on the buyer persona, not so important to the buyer. And that's how we come up with the top 5 messages. And we also build out of that the content strategy. Here are the assets we need to build. So should be doing this in a group. There's chapter 8 in the book is all about that. And working as a group of 4 to 6 people, no more than 6 people, you'll never get through it. And coming up with decisions that will then go forward onto all your marketing materials and also help you to align with your sales team on who they're going to call on and what they're going to say. So that's a lot.
Cool. Really, really great stuff. And I highly recommend this book here, Buyer Personas by Adele Revella. Thank you very much, Adele, for being with us.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks all.